When we log into our application, we are redirected to this dashboard page. This dashboard is being displayed using this particular route. I need to create a similar another route, but before we do that, I'll create a model. So let's do that. I'm going to create a model and I'm going to call it item, and I will also create the migration and factory for it. Now that command has run successfully, let's open up our factory and define the table columns. I want my items to be linked to user, so each user is going to have multiple items. So I'm going to define a user ID column, and I'm also going to define an index on it. I will define a name column, and I will also define a price column. And then finally we are going to have a status column, which is going to be a boolean. And now that we have defined our migration, let's run it. PHP artisan migrate. And there we go, our migration has run successfully. Let us open up the models, both the item as well as the user model. Within the item model, first of all, I'm going to define the fillable properties. I'm going to define the fillable properties as name, price, and status. And then I'm going to define the relationship with the user model. I'm going to define a user method, which would return a belongs to relationship. And there we go. Now in the user model, I'm going to define the inverse of the relationship. So I will define a method and name it as items. And this would return has many relationship. And there we go. Now let's open up the factory class. And we are going to define user ID. We would define the user model. I'm going to import it and call the factory class. Then I would need to define for the name, price, and status. For the name, I would use the faker word method. Price would be a random number with 2 digits. And status would be a boolean. Now let's open up the Tinker and use this factory to insert some records. I'm going to insert 5 records, and I will overwrite the user ID as 1, which is the user we have already registered. Well, there seems to be a typo. Let me correct it. Here we go. Let's insert few more records. And that is it. Now that we have inserted records, let's continue ahead in our next video.